Pekudei, Mishkan, these are the accountings of the Mishkan, of testimony, etc. So the mimer is going to explore a few questions. First question is, why does it say Mishkan twice? Mishkan. It could have just said it once. Second question, why does it say Asher Pukad al Pi Moshe? That it was accounted for according to the mouth of Moshe. It should have just said Asher Pakad Moshe, that without the LP, without being through the mouth of Moshe. And third question is, why does the continuation of the pasuk say Avodas Halavim? It seems like it's unnecessary and tangential and not directly related to the accounting that Moshe is making of the Mishkan. And then the end of the pasuk says that the Avodah Halavim was through the hands of Isamar. So that's another question: why is specifically Isamar, when seemingly according to the Al-Sheikh that there was also help with through the other son of Aaron Kohen, which was Elazar. So why Davka Isamar and not Elazar? So those are the four questions. Now to explain, we first have to understand what is the whole purpose of the Mishkan in general, which the purpose of the Mishkan Bechlal is for the dwelling of the Shechina amongst the Yidden, as we have the very famous pasuk, V'shechanti b'seichem, I'll dwell within you. And it also is written in Yirmiyah that is the Heichal Hashem Hema, that it is the sanctuary of Hashem. And the whole purpose of the Mishkan was to have a dir b'tachtainim, a dwelling place for Hashem in the lowest world. So we have an obvious question that how can you have a dwelling place for Hashem in the Mishkan if Hashem is everywhere? There's the famous pasuk in Yirmiyah, es hashemayim v'haaretz ani moli. So we answer this seeming contradiction by understand, what does it really mean, dir b'tachtainim? Dir b'tachtainim means it's a place where you have revelation of godliness. And what does tachtainim mean? Tachtainim doesn't mean physically low place. It means a spiritually concealed place, a place where normally there's a lot of spiritual concealment. So it really, what it means, el yainim and tachtainim, it means that there's myriads of different worlds that have higher and lower levels of natural revealed levels of godliness. And so the tachtainim, the lowest, is basically a place where there's the greatest natural contraction and concealment of godly light. As we have the pasuk in Yeshaya, haarets. And so specifically, what does it mean that Hashem wanted dir b'tachtainim? Specifically, in that world, that world, spiritual world, where there's the least revelation of godliness naturally, it's the darkest specifically, from that greatest concealment of godliness, that is where the light should be revealed. And how do we do this? Through Torah mitzvahs, because our sages say that 1 hour of tshuva meisim tovim in this world is greater than the whole world to come. Because through this, we actually draw down, specifically through Torah mitzvahs, we draw down this revelation of godliness greater than even we would ever have been able to accomplish in the world to come. And this, dira, this dwelling place, this revelation of godliness down here in this normally concealed world, is done through the avodah of iskafia sidrachra. So what is that? That is the avodah of pushing away negativity, specifically the yetzer hara. As it says in the Zohar, that when one pushes away negativity, it causes the glory of Hashem to ascend and be, more revealed and manifest. So the two levels of avodah is iskafia and then isabcha. Iskafia means to push away evil, And then once you've done that first step of Iskafia, then you could do Hisabcha, which is to transform the darkness into light. And this whole avodah of Iskafia has to be done with all 5 of our senses. So with our sight, we have to do Iskafia. That's specifically by closing our eyes when we see tempted to see evil or negativity, as it says in the pasuk in Yeshaya, "Oitzem einav meres bera." Also, with our ears, we have to do Iskafia, and through our speech and through our actions, we have to do Iskafia. So we really have to use all of our senses, as it says, famous Gemara Vamas. We have to sanctify ourselves through the permissible, and sanctify ourselves through the permissible, through pushing away evil and closing our senses off to evil. Then we can actually transform the darkness into light using our 5 senses, and make ourselves a vessel for, and the world a vessel for, Hashem's infinite light. And this is what it says with regards to that in Yirmiyah, it refers to the Jewish people, that they're Heichal Hashem Hema. Actually repeats it 3 times. Heichal Hashem, Heichal Hashem, Heichal Hashem Hema. That Heichal Havaya, Hashem is specifically Yud Vavke. The Jewish people are a sanctuary of Hashem, because the positive mitzvahs and the negative mitzvahs are dependent on the Hashem's Tetragrammaton Yud Vavke. As we will explain later on, that the positive mitzvahs are actually connected to the second 2 letters of Hashem's Tetragrammaton, Vav He, the last 2 letters of Hashem's name. And the negative mitzvahs, the mitzvahs Leisase, are connected to the first 2 letters of Hashem's Tetragrammaton Yud. And through fulfilling the mitzvahs, the positive and the negative mitzvahs, we actually create a heichal for Yud Vavke, a sanctuary for a vessel to reveal Hashem's infinite name of Yud Vavke, of Havaya. And that's the whole inyan of Shachanti B'Seichem, of causing Hashem's name to dwell amongst the Jewish people. As we say, as it says later on, that with regards to the whole concept of the accounting for the Mishkan of testimony. And this is the whole inyan of what our sages say, that in the future, asidim tzadikim sheyemu b'fneim kadesh, that the tzadikim will say the word holy, meaning to say that through Torah mitzvahs we draw down onto our souls and the souls of the tzaddikim this revelation of infinite godly light, which is the level of kadosh. Kadosh means separateness, which is so lofty and great. And therefore, of course, that's why we say kadosh, kadosh, kadosh 3 times. Kadosh, because we want to, I guess, connect and draw down to that infinite godly light that's beyond, beyond, beyond. And that's why in the pasuk in Yirmiyah, it says Heichal Havaya 3 times. Heichal Havaya, Heichal Havaya, Heichal Havaya Hema. And meaning to say that these 3 times where it says Heichal Hashem, Yud Vavke, that corresponds to the 3 levels of the soul, of the garments of the soul, which are thought, speech, and action, which in the thought, speech, and action, we're through our thought, speech, and action, we're actually able to do all of the 613 mitzvahs. So, and the whole idea of it, dir b'tachtonim, is that the neshamos, the souls, should still be in this world in a physical body, and our souls in our physical body in this physical world become a vessel for the kadosh, meaning a vessel for something which is normally totally separate and lofty and totally beyond this world, which is God's infinite holiness. And all this is done through iskafia, through transforming pushing away negativity, and doing good. As it says in the pasuk of Tehillim, Sur Meira Va'aseh Tov, etc. So now moving on to Ois Beis, chapter 2, we say that in order to understand the reason why Istala Gekar Dekucha Brichu, meaning that why is it that Iskafia, specifically the void of Iskafia, has such a power that it's able to cause God's infinite glory to ascend through pushing away negativity. We have a simple question that I thought that Sitra Achra, that negativity doesn't really take up any space in Seder Shtalshlus, meaning to say that just like a spider, like a little bug, I guess, in the small corner of the king of the most magnificent large palace, it's nobody even notices it. It's like the most insignificant thing. So it's got Sitra Achra, negativity seems to be just like that, like small little spider in the grandest palace. It's not actually Toifus Makom. And the proof text to this concept of Sitra Achra not being Toifus Makom is the pasuk Smamis B'yadayim Tisapes, etc. So it's from Mishlei. So how can we reconcile this? That pushing away Sitra Achra had such a great accomplishment, while on the other hand, it seemingly doesn't. It's not really Teifus Makom, does not really take up actual space. So how can we say that that's such a significant accomplishment? So in order to just answer this question, we first have to preface understanding the source of positive and negative mitzvahs. So it is known that it's written in the Tikkunei Zohar. It's written in the Tikkunei Zohar in the introduction to the Tikkunei Zohar. On the verse Zeh Shmi La'ilam V'Zeh Zichri, it's a pasuk in Shmais, that when we say Shmi, I guess the Zohar is analyzing the repetition. Why does it have to say Zeh? This is my name forever, and this is my remembrance. So Shmi actually is connected to the first two letters of Hashem's name, Yud-K, which corresponds to the negative mitzvahs, 365 negative mitzvahs. And the last two letters of Hashem's name, Vav-K, is connected to the second half of the pasuk, Zichri, V'Zeh Zichri, which is the 248 positive mitzvahs, the mitzvahs aseh. So we know, which is actually a big chiddush to people that aren't exposed to Chassidus, that that the negative mitzvahs are actually higher than the positive mitzvahs, because it's connected to Yud-K of Hashem's name, which is higher than Vav-He. The reason why Yud-K is higher than Vav-He is because Yud-K is actually a name of Hashem in and of itself, as opposed to Vav-He, which is not any name of Hashem at all. And that's why we actually say Yehi Shmei Rabbah. So what does the word Shmei mean? Shmei is Aramaic for his name, obviously, but the deeper explanation is that Shmei is Shin, Mem, Yud, and He. So it's the shame of Yud-K, meaning may Hashem's name Yud-K be great. So that's very powerful insight there, brought down from the Torah Or Chaim. And it's also explained similarly with regards to the in Parshas Nitzavim on the pasuk Hanistarais LaHashem Elokeinu, the Nistarais Vanigleis Lanu Levanenu, right? The Nistarais, the concealed things, are for Hashem. That's alluding to Yud-K, the first two letters of Hashem's name. Vanigleis, but the revealed things, that is connected to Vav-K, the last two letters of Hashem's name. So and that actually makes sense, because it says the word vehanigleis in the pasuk. Vehanigleis is the last two letters of Hashem's name, Vav, Hey, Niglois. So the last two letters of Hashem's name, Vav, Hey, are the Niglois, is the revealed. So similarly, Shmi is higher than Zichri. So just like Shmi is higher than Zichri, like in the pasuk we brought down in Shmais, in the Zayar, it's understood in says the Gemara in chapter 3 of Psachim. So you can look over there further. If that's the case, the negative mitzvahs are actually higher than the positive mitzvahs. And therefore, that's why it's brought down that if one, I think there's a famous Gemara in Yavamis, I believe, in Yuma, Gemara in Yuma, that if one was over on mitzvahs aseh, on a positive mitzvah, let's say he, transgressed a positive mitzvah, he didn't do a positive mitzvah, and then he wants to do tshuva, he so he gets, so to speak, forgiven right away once he does tshuva. However, that's not the case by negative mitzvahs. He has to actually wait till Yom Kippur, tshuva toila, meaning he has to wait until Yom Kippur to get the full tshuva done for transgressing a negative mitzvah. So it shows, again, the greatness of the negative mitzvah of the positive mitzvah. Because it's drawn down from the level of Yud-K. The negative mitzvahs are drawn down from the level of Yud-K, which is much higher levels. So you need to connect to a higher level, which you can only access on Yom Kippur to do tshuva. And so this is l'chaira, seemingly this is Pella, a great wonder, because the positive mitzvahs, the whole idea of a positive mitzvah is to reveal and draw down godliness through an action of which are connected to the 248 Pekudei of the 248 limbs of the king. And negative mitzvah, you're not doing anything. So how can you say that by not doing something, I'm accomplishing more? It's even greater than doing something. Seems counterintuitive. So how can we say that a negative mitzvah, Mrs. Lysa say, is greater than Mrs. Ase? So the whole Inyan is adraba. On the contrary, that the reason is that because the source of a negative mitzvah is from such a lofty place, which is the level of Yud-K, the first letters of Hashem's name, therefore we don't have a vessel down here below to contain such a lofty godly revelation. And that's why the only way to cause that lofty godly revelation to come into this world is by not doing anything. Because the kli, we can't even create a kli, a vessel for that such a lofty godly revelation, as opposed to a positive mitzvah, which we actually are able to create a kli, but it's more commensurate to the kli we create, which is much lower. And that's the whole concept of the pasuk of Yirmiyah, where it says be'eretz eloi zeruah. So what does it mean? That planting zeruah is the level of low, meaning to say that through fulfilling the negative mitzvahs, this actually draws down this level based on the pasuk in Yirmiyah. Later, and a few psukim later, it says lo yashav adam sham, that a person does not dwell there, meaning to say that this, I guess, revelation or spiritual accomplishment is of performing a mitzvah leisa, say, of a negative mitzvah, is much higher than mitzvah aseh, because mitzvah aseh is connected to the idea of adam, of man, because the positive mitzvahs are the 248 limbs of man, of a king, of a human king, or at least that's the metaphor. So lo yashav adam sham is the whole idea of the negative mitzvahs, that man, or primordial man, can't even dwell there. This is all understood by prefacing first this concept of positive mitzvah. Mitzvah's aseh is the 248 limbs of the king, as we've been saying over and over. And the negative mitzvahs are the 365 sinews that I guess cause the blood to transfer from each of the limbs. So I guess I guess the whole argument in the mashal would be, what's more important? Are our limbs more important, or are the veins and sinews that cause the transfer of blood from one limb to the next and actually oxygenate and give life to all the limbs, which is more important? Now, obviously you need both. But the whole idea of avarim, of limbs, is by way of analogy, like a vessel. A limb is a vessel for life force, just like the analogy he brings here is our brain, our head is a vessel for the power, the spiritual power of intellect to be enclosed in it, and therefore reveal our intellect through our thoughts. And similarly with our hands, our hands are a vessel that through this physical vessel, this limb, it is our spiritual power of action can be enclosed in our hands, and then we could do things with our hands. So, and that obviously connects to the nimshal of the positive mitzvahs, that the positive mitzvahs are essentially vessels for Hashem's infinite life force to reveal itself and to cause impact in the world. And it's brought down in Beinanim. I presume this means Sefer Beinanim of Tanya, how the chayis, how life force is enclosed in limbs, is only in a revealed way. It's basically an illumination from the soul. But it doesn't actually reveal the soul itself, because you can't say that, oh, my hands, the action of my hand is the soul itself. It's an illumination and a ha'ara, a radiation, or I don't know if radiation is the best word, an expression, a direct expression of the soul. But you can't say it's the soul itself. It's not the essence of the soul is my hand, the actions that my hands are doing, or the thinking that my intellectual exercise that my brain's doing. So you can't, it's not shaykh to say that, oh, my soul, the essence of my soul is divided into 248 pieces, which make up the limbs. No, 248 limbs are 248 expressions of my soul, but it's not the essence of my soul. And also the revelation from the essence of the soul is illuminated and clothed in the brain. And this illumination is drawn down from there to all of the limbs and reveals and receives the power of each limb to be able to do what it needs to do according to what it's able to do. Even though the 248 mitzvahs, and by way of analogy, the 248 limbs of a human are a direct expression of the essence of the soul, they're not the essence of the soul itself. So it's understood that this illumination from the soul in each limb becomes one with the essence of the soul. And it becomes literally one. That the soul is a maskelas b'seichel sheb'meach, meaning the soul is an entity that can have intellectual capabilities. And the soul is something that has the ability to speak. But the only way to express that soul is through the vessels of the brain or the mouth to speak, etc. And when the soul leaves the body, essentially what happens is all of the powers, soul powers that was invested and drawn down into the limbs, these soul powers become removed as well. And despite the fact that they are previously each in their own unique vessel. And this is understood by way of analogy above with the whole idea of the 248 limbs of the king, meaning the king of kings, Hashem. As we know, the famous mimer, Hayadua, this is I think from the introduction to the Tikkunim Zohar, that Hashem and his life force is one. Hashem's essence is one with his life force. Hashem's also, which is the light, and Hashem is also one with his garmohi, which would gives his vessels, his attributes, so to speak. So we're going to look at this this quote from the Zohar in a little more depth. So chayohi in the Zohar, that represents or, light, because chayohi is I guess Aramaic for the word chayis, light, energy, life force, which is drawn down from the Or Ein Sof to become clothed in chesed, or whatever other of the 10 attributes we have. And it's known that chesed is called the right arm, the right side of Hashem, I guess, which is the vessel and limb to contain the light, the simple light and life force that is drawn down from Hashem's essence, that goes into the right side of Hashem figuratively and expresses itself in a way of chesed. Yeah, and then we know that it's also says in the introduction to the Tikkunim Zohar that lav mikol inun midos ihu klal, that we know that Hashem himself is not the actual midos, but Hashem's essence expresses itself through the right side, which is the chesed. And if that's the case, behold that iuvachayohi chad, so that him and his light is one, that the light and life force is unique in its source, in Hashem's infinite Ein Sof source, as we said earlier, with regards to the analogy of unifying of the his achdus of the life force of the limbs in its source, which is the essence of the soul. And so we also say iu v'garmoi chad as we move on to the next column of Daf Gimel, Amud Gimel, that Hashem and his vessels are one, meaning that Hashem is totally one with his attribute of chesed, for example, and completely one. And this hamshacha, I guess, from Hashem's essence into the keli, of chesed, for example, is that it becomes enclosed in the 248 limbs of the king, in order to become totally one, in a matter of iuch v'chayohi v'garmoyi, that his light and vessels are totally one with his essence. And that's all through the 248 mitzvahs aseh, through the positive mitzvahs. For example, if one gives tzedakah or does acts of kindness, he draws down this right side of Hashem, which would be Hashem's chesed. And he creates a vessel to draw down Hashem's chesed into the world. When we do, when someone does a mitzvah of that involve dinim, let's say, I don't know, like a judge has a court case, carries out a court case, and whatever capital punishment related mitzvahs, or there's so many mitzvahs that are more related to court and establishing justice, etc., then essentially what we're doing is we are creating a vessel for Hashem's gvura to be manifest and drawn down into the world. And specifically, and also through overcoming our inclination, the Yetzer, the Yetzer Hara, which is also the level of gvura. When we push away the Yetzer Hara, that is someone that's a gibor. A gibor, as it says in Pirkei Avos, a mighty person is someone that overcomes his inclinations, his Yetzirah. So that would also be drawing down Hashem's infinite Ein Sof light through the vessel of Gvura, through his Gvura, through the left side of Hashem, which is Gvura. And according to this, it's understood also the concept and advantage of learning Torah, even the advantage of learning Torah, even over doing other mitzvahs. Why? Because we have two levels. Within the 248 limbs, we have one aspect of the 248 limbs, which are the external limbs. For example, I don't know, our arms, our legs, different external parts of our body. These are all external limbs. And the second kind of limbs of the 248 limbs are internal limbs. I guess like, I don't know, stomach, liver, lungs, etc. And by way of analogy for humans, our internal organs, our internal limbs are, I guess, much more important for our survival than our external limbs. Meaning to say, like if someone lost a finger or a hand, it would still survive. But if someone, even if the smallest puncture happened in someone's lungs or heart, for example, it would cause much, much greater damage. So that's the analogy. Now, with regards to the analog, we see that even though Hashem is not a body and does not have ein lai guf v'lai dmusa guf, as it says in the very famous piyut of Yigdal Elokim Chai. Even though Hashem doesn't have any corporeality, nevertheless, the Torah speaks in a way of the way that humans can understand. So that's why we're using this analogy of the body, because we're creating Hashem's image, and we can understand more about Hashem through understanding the human body. So with regards to the analog, we also have internal organs and external organs. So the way to generally understand it is that the mitzvah of learning Torah is our, so to speak, the internal organs within the positive mitzvahs. And I guess the proof text for this would be because we know that the Torah is derived from Hashem's chachma, which is more internal aspect of Hashem. And also we say in Koheles, it says chachmas adam ta'ir panav, that the wisdom of man illuminates his face. Panav, I guess, comes from pnimius, right? So the inner aspect of a person is illuminated through learning Hashem's wisdom, which is Torah. And we have an Inyan Savu Panav, that Rabbi Abahu, his face illuminated when he learns a new Tosefta, a new insight in the Torah of Toseftas. When he learned a new Tosefta, his face would illuminate. What does it mean his face illuminate? It means his panav, which means his pnimius, would illuminate, meaning the most internal aspects of himself would illuminate. As we also know in the Birchas Kohanim, it says Yar Hashem panav elecha. So, like our sages say, that anyone who reads, who learns Torah, Hashem is learning Torah, I guess directly opposite you or next to you. This whole idea of Hashem learning Torah with you is the revelation of Hashem's infinite light into Chachma, into Hashem's Chachma. Hashem's essential light is illuminated to his Chachma, and from Hashem's essence, it can't even be compared to Chachma, because Chachma is one of the 10, I guess, vessels of Atzilus, one of the 10 attributes, which has limitation, and Hashem's essence is totally beyond limitation. But but this essence of Hashem, it becomes revealed in a way of pneumius, in an internal way, just like in the brain of a person, we reveals the most inner dimensions and inner life of a person. And this is what it means when it says or panacha nasata lanu teras chaim, etc. That through the light of your Hashem's most internal aspect of himself, he gave us the Torah. So that's all with regards to learning Torah. It's the internal organs of Hashem. But when we do mitzvahs, this is actually drawing down the level of the external limbs of Hashem, so to speak. For example, through doing acts of kindness, we draw down Hashem's right outer or external limbs. And therefore, Talmud Torah, learning Torah, which is Keneged Kulam, is, I guess, greater or equal to all of the mitzvahs. That is drawn down in a way of pneumius, of an internal way. And this is what it means, the last two letters of Hashem's name, Vav, He, is revealed to us through Torah mitzvahs, which is a very powerful concept, that the letters of Vav and He, Vav meaning learning Torah, where Hashem is learning with us, and the He, the last letter of Hashem's name, is through doing actual mitzvahs. We're able to, I guess, reveal Hashem to us, and through the positive mitzvahs. And this is what it means as zichri, with the vav he, that ascent, that causes the 248 to ascend. And this is through the positive mitzvahs, which draws down this unity of vav and he. Okay, now moving on to chapter 3, Ais Gimel of the Mimer, which will be the last chapter that we're going to learn for today's daf. So, Aval, however, Shmi, the first two letters of Hashem's name, which correspond to the negative mitzvahs, these are drawing down this level of Yud-K, of the higher level of Hashem's name, which is concealed to us, right? Because we don't have the vessels to contain and reveal it. And so now to explain this concept of the mitzvah leisase, of this high, concealed, abstract level aspect of Hashem, we have a pasuk in Eiv that it says "V'chachma me'ayin timatzeh," that wisdom comes from the level of ayin, meaning to say that chachma we know as the very first of the Esther spheres, which is, I guess, from Atzilus, is the beginning of Seder Shtalshlus, which corresponds to the Yud of Shem Havaya, right? The Yud, and then the He, and then Vav He. So that's the very beginning. That's the Chachma. And that's why we say, our sages actually teach us that the Olam Haba was actually, the world to come was actually created with the letter Yud of Hashem's name. So what does that mean? That because from Chachma, which corresponds to Yud, we actually are able to draw down the level of Bina, which is the second of the spheres, which is understanding and comprehending godliness. And then from this, that becomes the source of the world to come, because the whole purpose of the world to come is a time when the tzaddikim will sit and benefit from the ray and loftiness of the Shekhinah, of Hashem's presence. And that all starts from the letter Yud. So in order for the tzaddikim to actually benefit from this glory, ray of Hashem's presence, we have to have the letter Yud, which is the beginning of it all. So, and this is the whole idea of yesh ma'ayin, of the Hashem being able to create something from nothing. Because chachma is still on the level of ayin. It's a very fascinating level because chachma, on one hand, it is the first of the 10 spheres, but on the other hand, it's completely beyond to a certain extent. And it really has that bittul to it. So we say that, koyach ma, chachma is koyach ma, the power of Hashem's name, ma. So, and as we move on to the last column of Daf Gimel, Amud Daled, we're saying here that this level of ayin, that chachma, we find that chachma is found, this is the level that comes really before Seder Shtalshelus of Shem Havaya. It's really, even though it's part of Shem Havaya, it's really very much connected to before Seder Shtalshelus. And that's why it says in Sefer Yetzirah that Lifnei echad ma'ata sofer. Before one, what are you counting? Like it says, that Hashem is totally one without any calculation. So essentially what we're saying here is that you can't really count anything that's beyond one. Hashem is totally one beyond any calculation in any numerical sense. So why are you counting? What are you counting, so to speak? That there, in this level, this aspect of chachma is higher than comprehension because it's higher than bina, and bina is the whole idea of comprehending and processing and revealing the concealment of the wisdom. So really chachma is, to a certain extent, is where you can't, it's not really graspable yet. And that's why we say that chachma me'ayin timatzeh, because chachma is really the beginning of that revelation, but it's still not revealed yet. So it still has that aspect that it's really connected to the level of ayin, of completely beyond Seder Shtalshelus. And this is why our sages say, Kivriyasei shel olam bereisha chashecha v'hadar nahira. This is Gemara in Shabbos, that when the world was created, it was first dark, and then there was light. So what does this mean? The light is chachma, because chachma is the beginning of that revelation. It's like the classic example of chachma is that light switch that goes on a person's head when they come up with a good idea. In the cartoons, and they have that light above the head turning on. In order to have this, existence of chachma coming to existence from absolute nothingness, to have an idea that didn't even exist before, it just came to you like poof, like that, something from nothing. This has to be only after there's complete darkness, because there's nothing before it. So it really is the chachma is the closest to yesh ma'ayin that you can get within Seder Shtalshelus, because everything after chachma is just a process of the idea, that initial kernel of light from chachma as it proceeds down and down. But chachma is that element of yesh ma'ayin, because you had to first have had that concealment. And this is why it says in the Tehillim, Yashes Chayshech Sisrei, that specifically through the darkness and concealment of Hashem, we can actually draw down afterwards this light of Chachma, which is the beginning of revelation. And this is all alluded to in the first letter of Hashem's Tetragrammaton, the Yud. Because that's what a Yud is just a dot. A dot represents the source of something. Meaning you can't draw a line, or you can't draw anything without first having a dot. And so before you draw that initial dot of Yud, there's nothing there. And the revelation from there is only Arakatana, a small, I guess, very small illumination, because it's just a little dot. But from the Yud, we are able to create a Hey, which is expansion. And this is why it's called Hanistares, because Hashem's Chachma is completely hidden from us. It comes from the world of concealment. V'hine, and behold, from there you have the source of the lo sase. The source of the negative commandments come from Chachma. And in order to have this revelation of the Nistaris, to reveal the concealed, so to speak, it's impossible to have this revelation, even to have this revelation in the higher worlds with an actual full comprehension of this essence. Because we know that that there's nothing that can grasp Hashem, especially Hashem's essence, that's for sure. And so this whole concept of revelation is the idea of contemplation and comprehension. And so those two things don't always go together. If by definition Chachma is concealed, you're trying to comprehend and reveal that concealment, seems to contradict. And so I guess it's almost a question, I guess, that it's not comprehensible, that it's impossible to have this comprehension of something that is completely incomprehensible. And just similar to this idea that Hashem is chakim v'loi b'chachmei dia, that Hashem is wise without he doesn't contain the attribute of chachma, meaning to say that it's impossible for the comprehension of Hashem's essence to be, to actually comprehend it. The only way we can actually define Hashem is by using negative terminology. For example, we have to say Hashem doesn't have knowable wisdom, doesn't have our mortal wisdom. Meaning, we can't say Hashem is wise, because that would be defining and limiting Hashem, because Hashem is well beyond that, right? Because that would almost be insulting to Hashem to say, oh, he's wise just like us. So like, we're wise, Hashem's wise, he's just much wiser. No, it's the aspect of Chachma that Hashem has is completely beyond. We can't even comprehend or begin to relate and to understanding it. And the way to really, I guess, understand the difference between our Chachma and Hashem's Chachma is that our Chachma, we have ourselves, our soul, our existence, and then we have Chachma that we develop over time, that it's something in addition to our essence. We have our essence, and then we have our Chachma, then we have our wisdom. But Hashem's wisdom and his essence is completely one. And that is something that is completely beyond comprehension. The only way to, I guess, describe it is through using negative terminology. For example, that Hashem is not wise, meaning Hashem doesn't have the aspect of wisdom that we call wisdom. It is much beyond that. And similarly, from human intellect, we can't create anything with our intellect. But that's not the case with Hashem, because Hashem's chachma, through Hashem's wisdom, he's actually able to cause existence to come into existence from absolute nothingness through his wisdom, which is something completely incomprehensible to us humans. Like it says in the verse in Tehillim, b'chachma asisa, that Hashem literally creates through his chachma. And this is something that is completely impossible to comprehend, how this level of chachma will exist from absolute nothingness to existence. That because it's impossible to comprehend Hashem's essence and this concept that Hashem creates through his wisdom. So the only way we can actually describe it is by using negative terminology, like we've been saying all along, that Hashem doesn't have regular wisdom like you and me. It's much higher wisdom. And then from there, we draw down the source of the negative mitzvahs, as we spoke about earlier. That the whole concept of the mitzvahs leisase, these negative mitzvahs, is the whole concept of shlila, of negative description. So of not doing specifically. For example, one of the negative mitzvahs is that one is prohibited from eating forbidden fat, chaylev, or from eating blood. And this is because the source of these mitzvahs comes from this completely concealed level state that we're not able to comprehend currently, but only through negative comprehension. So the negative, this whole idea of not being able to describe Hashem in positive terms, but rather only in negative terms, this is intimately connected to this concept of not being able to, do through drawing down the negative misses, specifically through not doing something. And so that's why the only way to actually create actual vessels to draw down God's revelation is through the positive mitzvahs. For example, an esrog is a vessel to illuminate illuminate divine illumination. But that only divine illumination of the vav of Hashem's name, of the veha niglois, which draws down which is the light is able to be drawn down into the kalim of within the realms of comprehension. And therefore, we have down here also this vessel of creating a vessel for the positive mitzvahs. But for the negative mitzvahs, yashas choshech sisrei, that Hashem's, it's not shaykh to have any kli, to create a physical, an actual kli through a positive mitzvah, because we're trying to draw down an aspect of Hashem that's completely incomprehensible. So only through not doing something, that's forbidden, for example, not eating chaylev, we are ensuring that this divine flow of chayas from Hashem's vav yudke, which is the higher level of Hashem's name, is not impeded or interrupted. And specifically through our bittul, we can be channels to let that happen, but not through actually doing something. And that's why chachma is called emes. It's really truth. And if that's the case, we are able to draw down the chachma into chachma, the complete infinite revelation of the highest levels of godliness, even the concealed level of godliness, through bittul, through self-nullification. And that's why first there has to be darkness and then light. And therefore, eating forbidden fat, chelev, that would prevent this level of bittul and level of Hashem's chachma, Hashem's yudke, level of yudke to become drawn down. So that's we're now moving on to the beginning of Daf Daled in order to finish the Ois, Ois Gimel, chapter 3. Now, through the idea of not violating a negative mitzvah, one actually draws down this level of yudke that we were speaking about, which is the idea of hanistaras, the concealed aspects of Hashem. Because it is impossible to have a hamshacha to this level without this idea of shlila, of using negative terminology. You have to specifically not do something prohibited to cause this to come down. As it is said in Parshas Emor, v'lei sechalalu, and you shall not profane. They should not profane. I guess by transgressing a negative mitzvah, then one is profaning, causing halal, a lacking in Hashem's yudke, Hashem's name of yudke, and which would prevent Hashem from dwelling down here. And this is the whole idea of be'eretz loy zerua, specifically through the loy, through the mitzvah loy saseh. That is how we get the zerua, through we were able to connect to this darkness, of this concealment of Hashem is completely beyond revelation.